Hi there, welcome to Project Gaming. My name's Chris, aka Project Neo, and on this series we'll be looking back at the history of some of gaming's classic franchises. I'll be concentrating on series that are still available on PC, games that can be found and played today, whether that be on something like Steam or Uplay, or emulated on abandonware sites. Now, to kick things off, we'll be looking at one of the keystones of the CRPG genre, the Might and Magic series. In 1986, New World Computing, a software development company consisting of a single man working out of his apartment, released Might and Magic Book 1, The Secret of the Inner Sanctum, for the Apple II. This would be the beginning of one of the most popular RPG franchises of the early PC gaming era. A franchise that would span 10 mainline games, a series of novels, a card game, and numerous spin-offs, including the popular Heroes of Might and Magic series, which saw its 7th installment released in 2015. All of this thanks to the work of one man, John Van Caneghem. My history with Might and Magic began with Heroes of Might and Magic 2 in 1996. Stupid 11-year-old me thought it was related to Masters of Magic, a microprose strategy RPG released in 1994. I was so very wrong. The two games had nothing to do with each other, but that is how I was introduced to the series. A few years later, I found the Might and Magic Compendium at Babbage's. Yeah, remember Babbage's? Which contained the first 6 games in the series, and I grabbed it. This was my first taste of the Might and Magic RPGs. I tried to play the first few games first, but ended up getting enthralled in Might and Magic 6, The Mandate of Heaven. Since then, I haven't missed a game, whether that be the mainline RPGs or one of the Heroes games. And yes, even the terrible Dark Messiah of Might and Magic, which is widely considered to be the death knell of this once great franchise. Now, let's begin our look back at the history of one of the foundations of Western RPGs, the Might and Magic series. In 1986, John Van Caneghem released the largely self-developed Might and Magic Book 1, Secret of the Inner Sanctum. It had taken John 3 years to develop, and after finishing the game, he then had difficulty finding a publisher, and for the time, distributed the game himself out of his kitchen, though he would later secure a distribution deal with Activision. Since that time, it has been ported to DOS, Commodore 64, TurboGrafx-16, MSX, NES, and plenty more. Today, it is available on sites like Good Old Games, where you can buy it as part of a collection, which includes Might and Magic's 1 through 6. It can also be found on various abandonware sites. I got my most recent copy in a Humble Bundle, and have been playing it through Uplay. This was an RPG in the vein of Wizardry, Bard's Tale, and Ultima. Heavily inspired by Dungeons & Dragons, the game featured traditional classes and races such as elves and dwarves and knights and clerics. It also had an alignment system, though it seldom mattered in terms of gameplay. At the start, the player creates a 6-character party and is dropped down into the town of Sorpagal, where they are tasked with uncovering the source of the chaos enveloping the world of Varn. From there, the player is free to explore the maze-like world map on their quest to save the planet. This is a game that just oozes 1980s design, and it's reminiscent of the classic D&D Gold Box games, and unfortunately, like those games, it has not aged well. This game is brutally difficult at times, but not in that Dark Souls way where you know that if you refine your strategy a little bit, you will eventually beat whichever boss you're stuck on. No, Book 1 is hard in the way you feel like the deck has been stacked against you. You can easily stumble into a battle that will decimate your party, where you have no chance, and where RNG can and will screw you. This is no more apparent than in the beginning of the game, which, let's face it, is a major flaw, especially in a new game where you're trying to build a fan base. Simply being plopped into a world with little background knowledge or real preparation for your journey is something of a staple in the Might and Magic franchise, though. In Book 1, the player characters start with little more than clubs. Again, this makes the start of the game one of the hardest parts. When I tried playing for the first time, I think my party was killed in the first battle. After that, I decided to use maps and guides because, frankly, at this point, you kind of have to. The game is very sparsely self-documented. I'm sure the original release came with a nice manual that listed class information and spell descriptions. However, in-game, there's nothing. If you want to cast a spell in combat, you enter the spell level and then what number it is in your spellbook. Now, back in the day, most players just kept the manual with them, along with their trusty pad of graph paper, as was common at the time. Hell, they probably had to, as I'd assume the game came with an early passphrase copy protection. My favorite part about Book 1 is that it makes me feel like I'm playing Dungeons & Dragons. Some of my fondest memories as a kid are hanging out in my friend Seth's attic playing AD&D into the early morning hours. I had a ton of fun making my party, and I remade some of my favorite old D&D characters. The paladin, who had a tendency to lop off his own toes on critical misses. The evil elven mage that got his whole party killed when he abandoned them at the time of need. And even the half-orc fighter that had such low intelligence, it's amazing he was able to walk and breathe at the same time. I remade all my old PCs, and then promptly got them killed in their second battle. Holy crap, this game is hard.
There's a reason they don't make games like this anymore. They're slow, painfully difficult, and confusing at times. To this day, I have no idea how anyone is supposed to remember the layout of the various towns and dungeons, at least not without graph paper. With that said, the story's awesome. Unfortunately, you have to do some work to get to it. The party starts out trying to find the titular Inner Sanctum. This leads them to Korak and his quest to hunt for the evil Sheltum. As it turns out, Sheltum has been masquerading as King Alamar and was the source of the evil corrupting the world. The heroes, with the help of the real King Alamar, chase Sheltum to the astral plane, where they stop him from spreading his evil across the realm. However, Sheltum manages to escape to Kron, thus setting up the events for the next game. Something that has always fascinated me are fantasy stories that have a hint of sci-fi around the edges. It gives them a larger sense of scope and mystery that I love. And, as it turns out, VARN stands for Vehicular Astropod Research Nacelle, and the player's world is just a biosphere on this massive spaceship. How cool is that? Story-wise, Secret of the Inner Sanctum is that perfect D&D story. It's the game you spent all night playing, pounding Mountain Dew, and rolling dice like your life depended on it. The gameplay, unfortunately, just doesn't hold up after almost 35 years. And you know what? That's okay. We should look at Book 1 for the achievement it was in its era. This is a game made by one guy, in his kitchen, programmed in machine language. John Van Canegum is like Tony Stark building the Mark I suit in a cave out of scraps. Sure, the first suit wasn't great, but look what it led to. That's why, while Might and Magic Book 1 may not hold up today, it's a foundational piece of CRPG history, and should be hailed as a pillar of the genre today. So, thank you all for watching this episode of Project Gaming. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you'll check out our next episode, where we'll be talking about the next chapter in the Might and Magic saga, Might and Magic 2, Gates to Another World.